After a few private shows, they took me to New York. He told her she should start studying theater. Taking me there to meet someone, they sent me right away to the Alden Theater. I went up on stage. Didn't know what it was going to. Lee Van Cleef had the meanest eyes in Hollywood film history. But behind that famous stare was a man who was so weak he could hardly stand. He fought a fight that no one talked about for 15 years. His son didn't say anything until 2024, when he finally broke the silence and proved what fans had been saying for decades. He never got over the pain, the drinking, and the fear. This is why he almost quit acting in 1962. We're going to find out the truth about the man who played Angel Eyes but always felt like someone was watching him. People knew Lee Van Cleef's face even when he was a little boy. He was born on January 9, 1925, in Somerville, New Jersey. There was something sharp about him, and his eyes were steady. Pictures of him as a child make him look older than he was. It's almost like life had drawn lines on him before he earned them. The people who raised him were Dutch and American. His dad was a doctor, and his mom played the piano so well that it looked like she lived for music more than noise. They didn't have much, and they moved around a lot. With each move, young Lee felt like he was going into places he didn't quite fit. He always felt like he was on the outside of everything, which shaped his quiet attitude and the stillness that made him so appealing on screen. He liked numbers as a child and thought about becoming an accountant for a while. He learned about it, worked at it, and tried to make his life feel more stable. As the world changed, though, he joined the U.S. Navy in September 1942, when he was only 17. First, he got basic training. Then he went to sonarman school and learned how to listen for danger in the water. As of 1943, he was on the USS C-681, a submarine hunter that was patrolling the Caribbean and looking for German U-boats under skies that felt very big and heavy. For almost 10 months, the ship went through dangerous areas near Cuba and Jamaica. Every cruise brought the same low-level threat. He was made sonarman second class and taught at the Fleet Sound School in Key West. He worked on his hearing until he could use sound to read the sea. After that, the minesweeper USS Incredible showed up and put him in even more danger. During the landings in southern France in August 1944, the ship cleared mines ahead of the Allied fleets. This meant that it had to go into dangerous places where one mistake could kill everyone on board. There were German human bombs that the crew had to deal with in September 1944. He was aware, which helped them stay alive during the attack. Because he was brave, he was given the Bronze Star, which is a very special award for someone in his situation. Soon after, the ship went to the Black Sea and moored in Sevastopol. There were cold winds and mines hidden in the water. The ocean would sometimes freeze over in sheets around them. There were also times when air-sea patrols told them to pull fallen pilots out of rough waves. It felt like a test every day. Listening for tiny pings in the dark for long hours taught him to be patient and pay attention. Being still was something he learned that became one of his best acting skills. His fellow sailors said he never got scared, even when mines went off close enough to shake the deck. He felt very calm after that, and it changed the way he looked for the rest of his life. He thought the world was too quiet after leaving the Navy in February 1946. After years of danger, everyday life moved slowly. He did some math again. He did work on farms. Until something pushed him forward, he did small jobs. He was antsy and almost empty, like the war had taken away parts of him that would never come back with normal work. Then, in 1948, a friend pushed him to try out for a small theater group in Clinton. Even though he hadn't trained, something clicked as soon as he stepped under the lights. The crowd saw his sharp features and tall stature, and they paid attention without feeling like he had to say something. He got the lead part in Our Town, which led him to New York, where he joined Henry Fonda in the cast of Mr. Roberts on Broadway. The directors quickly saw him. Method wasn't used. It was just energy. He took up the whole stage by himself. Stanley Kramer saw him act and felt the same pull. Kramer was looking for new names and faces for his next movie, High Noon. When Van Cleef tried out for the part, the studio executive saw his hooked nose and recommended surgery. Van Cleef said no, and someone else got the big part. He was still cast in the movie, though, and something strange happened. He didn't have a single line in the play. Still, people remembered him, his face, his posture, and his steady look. He was Jack Colby, a member of Frank Miller's gang, and people were scared just seeing him on TV. This one quiet performance set the tone for how he would be cast in future roles. When Hollywood saw him, they knew he was the bad guy they had been waiting for. In the 1950s, he played a lot of different bad guys. He worked all the time. KCK Confidential came out in 1952, The Lawless Breed in 1953, and The Big Combo in 1955. Movie Images wanted that face on them, and he kept getting parts. He was in more than 10 movies in 1957. The job paid well, but there wasn't much freedom. No one dared to think that the bad guy might not be what they thought he was. Even though he kept playing, he sometimes wondered if he would ever be able to get out of the box he was living in. Then the accident happened in 1958, when he was making his daughter a playhouse. He hurt himself and lost the last joint of his right middle finger. The accident led to rumors that he never fixed. He leaned into it instead. Directors set up shots to show the thumb that wasn't there. It made the danger worse. It made the story better. That fact added to his character's creepy edge in 1966 as the good, the bad, and the ugly. What started out as a mistake became a famous event. That was the strange magic of his life. Bad luck kept turning into fuel. In the late 1950s, Lee Van Cleef lived like he was running away from something he couldn't quite put his finger on. It was always hard to do the work that came quickly. He rushed through 7 movies in 1957, and each one had him in a mean part. The movie Gunfight at the OK Corral came out on May 1st, and he played Ed Bailey in it. After 3 weeks, on May 22nd, he became Mejnuncham in The China Gate. He was back in The Tin Star as Ed McGaffey by October 23rd. It kept going up with movies like Raiders of Old California, The Lonely Man, and The Quiet Gun. In 1958, The Young Lions was the next turn. It seemed like it would never end, and TV kept his attention. His first role was as Cherokee Bob in Tales of Wells Fargo on February 18, 1957. His second role was as Ed Murdoch in Richard Diamond Private Detective in 1958. He had already done Annie Oakley twice in 1955. A lot of different shows, like Brave Eagle, Adventures of Champion, Samaritan City, Episode 25 in 1959, and many more, passed through his life. He made $500 a week, which was the same amount he made for the first time in 1952 after High Noon. As the years went by, the roles kept piling up, but the pay didn't change much. He worked himself to the bone for scraps. Studios only had one type of trust in him. They knew he could glare, sneer, and look scary. He was locked up in that box by Universal and United Artists. He was cast in cheap westerns by Universal, like The Vanishing American, 1955, as J. Lord, and was charged with murder in 1956 as Surrend. Mr. Emmett Lackey. In December 1958, United Artists tied him to a knife. He had the same sharp eyes and edge that made people notice him in High Noon in 1952, even though he never spoke a word. It's funny because he almost played an officer in that movie, but Stanley Kramer tried to soften his face by having surgery on his nose. Lee told them no, and because of that, they put him down to a mute goon called Jack Colby. And after his car accident in the late 1950s, the studios clamped down even more. Like First Sergeant Rickett in The Young Lions, they gave him bits. No one thought he would do anything but stand there in the dark. Noir movies like 1952's Kansas City Confidential showed what he could do, but no one wanted to see him as a real person. He got stuck in it. Every day, the work hurt his body. He hurt his leg more nights than he wanted to admit because of long rides on stiff seats, falls on cold dirt, and doing the same rough sets over and over again. During the gunfight at the OK Corral, he choked on lone pine dust for hours on end while going into bar fights without pads. In Raiders of Old California, he rode horses without a saddle and raced as Sergeant Pardee. He fell over and over again on the rough ground because of the quiet gun. And there was no stunt double when he shot It Conquered the World in 1956. He had to jump and leap on his own. As late as 1946, he was still hurt from his time on the USS Incredible, but B Western plans didn't care. Boots hurt his feet a lot. In saddles, he twisted so much that his back got big. TV shows weren't any nicer. On the 1951 show Range Rider, he fought on horses just minutes after he got to work. There were no doctors or time to rest, there was only the next call. It seemed like something was breaking every day. He had a slow burn inside him. No one asked him what he wanted to become, they cheered for his bad guys and hissed at him even when he was in a tux. High Noon in 1952 sealed his name. People saw steely eyes and a sneer, not the work of an actor who had learned how to act on stage during Mr. Roberts' tours in 1950 and 1951 or the discipline he learned in the Navy from 1942 to 1946. By 1957, he knew that parts like Ed Bailey in Gunfight at the OK Corral would end before the end of the story. That habit hurt him more than he told anyone. He did say one thing. People hated him on stage, so he always played bad guys. There was real pain behind that joke. He was in almost 90 movies, and most of them only gave him 3 minutes on screen before he was killed. He got into more trouble after the crash in 1958. There was no more money. To stay alive, he painted houses. Joan, his wife, worked at IBM in an office. There were many bills on the table. Boo's story stuck around. They got married in 1945 and had 3 kids together, Alan, Deborah, and David. They split up in 1960 after 15 years of marriage. Rejection ate away at him from the inside. Then came the night when everything broke. It was fall 1958, and the road in California was winding. After Ride Alone work in Lone Pine, his family piled into the car. There was a truck that appeared out of nowhere. His world was smashed in an instant by the crash. 2 places on his left arm broke. His kneecap broke into pieces. Things tore like paper. He was 33 years old and had been stuck in a hospital bed for a month, looking into the future with fear. The doctors said the limp would never go away. People told him he'd never ride a horse again. That was like the death sentence for a Western star. When he fought back, he was really stubborn. During therapy, he was shaking with pain. When his knee wouldn't bend, he pushed it too. It hurt, but he kept going because giving up would have been worse. After 6 months, he got back on a horse, even though the doctors told him not to. It was a small win, but it cost something. The crash broke more than bones. It broke up his family life. The marriage was over by 1960. Bills made him feel bad again. He had a hard time getting work. One of the worst times in his life happened at that time. He felt the pain for many years. It went with him on long shoots, walks to the trailer at night, and scenes where stuntmen had to be used because his leg couldn't handle them. In 1965, when he shot for a few dollars more, he had to use doubles for many rough scenes. Even though he hid the pain that never went away, he still rose higher than ever. People liked how tough he looked, but they had no idea how weak he really was every morning. All the way up until his death on December 16, 1989, the injury changed every day. He had heart problems because of age and stress. Below the surface, there was another fight going on. When another tree crashed on August 19, 1959, it reminded him of his nightmare from the night before. It made his pain worse. It hurt to be in his body. Getting drunk helped him calm down. He drank more because he was afraid of losing his job, felt ashamed that he needed help, and was sad that his marriage had ended. It took about 15 years to fight that battle. It wouldn't go away even after getting married. Besides that, he smoked. While in the Navy, he picked up a pipe and never put it down. He always had cigarettes with him. As a way to escape and show who he was, he used it. His lungs were scarred from years of smoking. He had to deal with bronchitis and asthma. Lung cancer later cast a dark shadow over his last years. After many years, when his son spoke, he confirmed what other people had only whispered. The stories about drug abuse were true. Van Cleef was in a lot of pain. His past mistakes and the jobs he lost haunt him. Even though he put on a serious face and a steady voice, he fought himself every day. His acting on screen made him seem confident, but he was really scared, angry, and let down. Because that was the only way he knew how to stay alive, he kept these fights quiet. It gives his story more weight and makes him seem more real. The man people saw on TV was tough, but the man at home was worn out, hurt, and barely able to keep going. Lee Van Cleef felt like he was falling through a crack that he might never get out of by the early 1960s. It was hard to get money. There were a lot of bills. He took any small TV roles he could find some weeks. Some weeks, all he did was office work to make ends meet. His worst blow was when his knee was crushed in a car accident in 1959. Doctors told him he would never be able to ride a horse again. That made a Western actor feel like the door had been slammed in his face. He felt pain and fear all the time. After the fact, he even said that he had considered giving up playing to paint full-time. He really liked drawing. It felt better than being turned down. His last real movie part was as a small bad guy in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. After that, his name was forgotten in Hollywood so much that he himself wondered if he was no longer alive. After that, something changed. It came from somewhere he didn't expect. Sergio Leone began looking for someone who seemed dangerous. For a few bucks more, there was someone who could stand next to Clint Eastwood in 1965 and really feel like a match. Leone knew Lee from movies like High Noon and Gunfight at the OK. A Corral. He remembers how sharp his face looked and how cold and quiet he was on screen. He then went to find him. He found him. He also offered him the part of Colonel Mortimer with a $17,000 salary. For Lee, who was only making $500 a week before, that amount of money seemed almost too good to be true. He didn't think about it for too long before taking the job. He told me later that he had no idea that one choice would make his whole life different. Once for a few bucks. More movie house hits. It all became clear. Right away, people in Europe were interested in him. They liked how he moved. You could tell he knew more than what he said by the way he looked. He wasn't completely good or completely bad. People could tell he was a man with a mission. His relationship with Clint Eastwood went beyond just working together on movies all of a sudden. It felt like a tale. It was the first time in Lee Van Cleef's career that he wasn't the main bad guy. He was a co-leader. With that weight behind him, he became one of the most recognized faces in spaghetti westerns in the late 1960s and early 1970s. He didn't think his second life would be so good. It did come, though, and it took him farther than he thought possible. Then came The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly in 1966, which gave him the part that would make him famous for life. Angel Eyes, It's Cold. The man's smile was like a warning sign, as he thought. The movie made over $38 million around the world. All of a sudden, his face was everywhere. Magazine and newspaper spreads, posters, and more. His name was being talked about like a hero now, even though no one had paid attention to him for years. Even so, there was a man behind all that fame who didn't trust any of it. People talked about how he always looked over his shoulder. He kept drawing. But he couldn't help but wonder if this success was real or if it would just go away like the others had. As soon as spaghetti westerns became popular in 1964, Europe couldn't get enough of characters who looked like they had lived through a dozen deaths. Lee was that. He was in movies like The Big Gun Down, Day of Anger, and Sabata from 1966 to 1969. Most of them were shot in Spain or Italy on very little money, but they drew big crowds all over Europe. It was 1968, and almost a third of all Italian movies were westerns. Lee was right in the middle of that rush. People cheered for him as an anti-hero even though they didn't understand him. It was strange to see a man who had been turned down by Hollywood suddenly treated like a king in Europe. But he was glad for it. It made him work. It gave him a reason to live again. Though the sharp glare and leather coat hid a body that wouldn't forget the past. After the crash in 1959, his knee never fully healed. It hurt to walk. It felt like a test every long day on the horse. He kept going even though it hurt. People who worked with him often said they never heard him complain. During very hot and rocky sets, he moved through them in the same quiet and determined way he moved through life. Cruise told stories about how strong he was without being heard. He did everything. He hid his pain like other men hide theirs. During the course of his work, he moved into different types of music. When Flight to Mars came out in the 1950s, it was science fantasy. Kung fu movies like The Octagon and Escape from New York with John Carpenter in 1981 were popular in the 1980s. A lot of people didn't like these B flicks, but Lee didn't care. He took on jobs so that he could keep working and take care of his family. Reviews didn't mean as much to him as his work. Even more important was that he stay alive. He stayed alive because he was willing to change. While many others went away. The people in Europe who liked him never turned away. People went to the movies even after he stopped making them because just his name meant something familiar, tough, or cool. Posters with his picture are no longer available. They saw him change from a quiet shooter in 1952's High Noon to a layered bounty hunter in 1965's For a Few Dollars More to a scarred Captain Hawk in 1981's Escape from New York. They had a good view of the arc. They saw how he changed, but his quiet heart stayed the same. His real life had just as many turns. The wedding took place on December 10, 1943, and he was only 18. They had 3 kids together, Alan in 1947, Deborah in 1958, and David in 1990. But by 1958, the marriage was broken because of stress. There were problems with money, the accident, and drinking because of the pain. All of these things added up until they finally broke up. He changed a lot after his breakup. Friends said that's when he started to carry a heavier load. On April 9, 1960, 2 years after that, he married Joan Marjorie Drain. He took Denise in as his own daughter. And worked on rebuilding his business and his life at the same time. He decorated rooms inside and out. He made art. He tried out over and over. Even though Joan was there for him, the stress never went away. He was gone when work time came. When work was over, fear came back. They were married for 14 years before they split up in 1974. He hid more bruises under his quiet gaze. After that, he found something kinder. The Stranger and the Gunfighter was being filmed in 1974 when he met Barbara Havilone, a calm performance pianist. In 1976, they got married and moved to Oxnard, California. He found the first real peace he had ever known in her. She was there for him when his parts were shrinking and his health problems got worse. She stayed until the end in 1989. People who went to see them said he was nicer back then. He let people in. He let himself feel safe once more. Still, he had a fear that he could never get rid of. Alan, his son, talked about it. It was talked about by friends. People told him he was always worried about being forgotten and the work stopping. Always scared that he would fall back into the darkness that almost ate him up. Some directors had trouble with him because his fears made him detached or hard to work with at times. As time went on, he drank more. He fought his own shadows and won. The man behind the famous stare often felt weak and easy to break. His heart started to fail in the late 1970s. Doctors told him not to. They told him to move more slowly. He had to have a pacemaker in the early 1980s. That didn't even make him give up. In 1984, he was in The Master and played any part he could get. In the same way that he dealt with knee pain, he worked through being tired, quietly and without complaining. He wasn't sure how to stop. Lee Van Cleef died at home in Oxnard on December 16, 1989, just 19 days before he would have been 65 years old. 64. He died of a heart attack, and throat cancer played a big role in that. He had always smoked, and it hurt him. He passed out suddenly and St. John's Hospital could not bring him back to life. Fans all over the world felt a strange ache, as if the tough guy who never gave up had just disappeared. In Hollywood Hills, he was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. In the courts of memory. Best of the Bad is written on his grave. It makes people smile. They know the line goes with his screen picture. They also know that he tried to be better than the parts he played his whole life. His grave has become a peaceful place for people who liked westerns and people who saw more in his tired eyes.